I love talking all things entrepreneurship, spirituality. Like, let's fucking go.
Everything in my world is about helping people to become full of themselves because otherwise we're full of the world.
I'm full of piss and vinegar. I was a competitive, like elite rugby athlete, like in varsity, like went to the University Olympics, won a bronze medal. Like I played competitively for so long.
For me, spirituality and embodied practices or movement are nowhere near as far apart as people think.
I'm gonna say what everyone's thinking and no one's willing to say out loud.
Welcome to Becoming Full of Yourself, the show where fulfillment is not a finish line, it's a way of being. I'm Ebony Allard, master coach, energy specialist, soul contract guide, here to help you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. In each episode, we explore what it means to lead from the inside out, embody your truth, and become so full of yourself that you overflow. Let's get into it. I am very excited about this episode. And you know how I say, I can't believe I've got this person and like, this is my favorite person about everyone. That's because I just only have good people in my world. And Kehla, I'm so happy to have you here. Will you introduce yourself for people who don't know you?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And it feels like such an honor because we've been in each other's worlds for what, almost 7 years now since the beginning, which is so exciting.
Mm.
So my name's Kayla. I'm in Victoria, BC, Canada, and I'm a human design Gene Keys AI business mentor. So I specifically support entrepreneurs in business online, but really helping them orient themselves in their business through the lens of their human design and Gene Keys and really building a business that's sustainable because you treat your business like an ecosystem, not, oh, I need to better my messaging and my strategy. It's like full picture view. So I'm a 6'2" sacral generator in human design. And I love the work I do. I have a podcast built for the edge and it has over 500 episodes, top 2%. And I'm really excited for this conversation. I love talking all things entrepreneurship, spirituality. Like, let's fucking go.
I have been having so many ahas recently about like this deepening, like every time I work with my own keys or when we get to this time of year and we're just about to go into gate 60, which is my earth, and I hit this like evolution of self where suddenly all these things land. And I think one of the things I wanted to share with everyone is that you have been such a big part of that. You know, there were people that when was starting my studying and learning human design and then kind of getting into the gene keys, when I first started learning gene keys, they were so complicated. And I was just like, there's too much information here. And then I would read what some people were writing or sharing about them and be like, there's so many words on this page and I don't understand anything you've just said. And then there were a couple of people who I was like, oh my God, like one, I could listen to you all day, and two, oh, and you were one of those, oh, people for me, where I would read your stuff or hear what you're sharing and be like, that, and like little pieces would just click or land for me in my body. And what I have found around the people who listen to this podcast, the people that are in my world, is that they are an expert in something and they've always been kind of on the edge or ahead of their time. Nearly all of them have like 23 or 43, or, you know, they have these kind of areas of being a little bit ahead of their time, being a little bit different, seeing stuff from a different perspective, and have had an interesting time with their body. And one of the things that has always been really important to me in this work, even though I'm very philosophical and ninth house Sagittarian focused, is grounding it into the 5-2-ness of like, and so what? Like, how can you use this information in your life? And what I love about you is that when we first met, you were personal training. And then you kind of had what some people might call a pivot, right? And where you kind of ended up going down this other path and like loads of things shifted and changed for you. And in my world, so many people have got either like alternative medicine or PT or dance or physio as this like other string to their bow. And often it's because they needed something to ground them into their body. And for me, spirituality and embodied practices or movement are nowhere near as far apart as people think, in the same way as art and science aren't. And for me, this idea of being full of yourself is really about embracing your full range. So I'm curious whether anything I've said just lands, or whether you're like, no, I did PT because blah, and then I ended up going down here.
Yeah, that's really funny. As you were saying that, well, a couple things. So yeah, I was a personal trainer. I went to university to become a physical education teacher. While I was in university, actually from 2003 until 2018, I was a competitive, like elite rugby athlete, like in varsity, like went to the University Olympics, won a bronze medal. Like I played competitively for so long. So I'm listening to you and I can see that first 28 years lull at the Saturn return was all about the body. I was studying the body, I was strengthening the body, I was being an athlete with the body, wanted to help other people train the body. And then I shit you not, literally at 29 years old. So I started my personal training business at 26. At 29 is when I started my online coaching business. That it was like such a distinct moment where I was like, I want to do mindset coaching. So this is when I was online and I started like, I'm a personal trainer and I'm going to be a mindset coach. Like that's literally the first episode on my podcast. And then you can see, and now I can see, oh my God, the intellectualization flip at the Saturn return. And then also seeing how in that it was like that's when I discovered more of manifestation and then law of attraction. I got into Reiki and then NLP, and I did like 12, not kidding, certifications for coaching related freaking modalities. Tell me you have an undefined head without telling me. And also, I then found human design and gene keys in 2021. So now it's now and now, oh my God, that's so funny. So I love how we're recording this as like the epiphanies are hitting. So now it's 2026. And the last 6 months, my messaging has sharpened heavily into what is the infrastructure while being able to see yourself and where you stand inside and outside of your business. And it's like the whole kit and caboodle from literally, 20 or 2003. So freaking 23 years ago. Like that's all come together now into this whole ecosystem of how I run my business. So I'm like, listen, at first I was listening to you and I was like, where are you going with this? And I was like, oh my God, I can see everything.
Yeah. I can't emphasize enough from my perspective, when you have a defined sacral and when you are a 6-2, if you don't have an embodiment practice, you're just away with the fairies. And like 6-2s with an open or undefined will center as well, who don't have an embodiment practice and have an open head, it's like you could just charge down a path and then wake up one day and think, what have I done with my life? And it's so important to have this like grounding practice, this time when you are getting out of your head or out of your open centers or out of your not self, to come back to that signature frequency, which we only find when we're in our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I have a completely open, well, yeah, only my G center and sacral are defined in my chart. My ajna, my heart center and my throat are completely open. And then I've got hanging gates. I have like 9 hanging activations off of my root, like so much possibility for pressure. So it's been really interesting paying attention to the undefined open centers, but also it's wild to see like only 2 channels, one's conscious, one's unconscious, running those 2 centers, and I'm like super grounded. So it's really interesting. But I do believe that somatic component with the mind, that connection is so important.
It's so important. And I have 4 defined centers, but mine are all unconscious. So you've got 2, but they're conscious to you, right? And I've got 2 channels and they're both unconscious. And so it's this work for me has been like revealing what's underneath. I'm like, oh, I can see it now, right? Like it's literally showing me the wiring of stuff I didn't have access to. And now I can see what's going on inside of myself. And now, but I've also got a map that I can see what's going on inside everyone else. And that is just the most helpful thing. And for me, it's not prescriptive. It's not about telling somebody who they are. It's none of those things. Everything in my world is about helping people to become full of themselves, because Otherwise, we're full of the world. Otherwise, we're full of conditioning. Otherwise, we're full of the radio and TikTok and Instagram, etc., right? I'm curious what you're full of when you're being yourself.
So I'm giggling because I filled out Ebony's form like probably 2 months ago to do this podcast interview. And when she asked the question on the form, Kayla, what are you full of? And I said, I don't know why I keep saying this. Like I just kept repeating it for like three different questions in the form. I was like, I am full of piss and vinegar. Like
And I
that's
kept being
just so
like, is this a
cheeky.
Canadian expression? I don't know.
I don't even know where the expression comes from, but just piss and vinegar, like, yeah, like I'm cheeky, I'm gonna say shit, I'm gonna drop an F-bomb, like I'm gonna say it like it is. And I just, yeah, I'll just say the things. Like I think that's a very open throat thing to do. Is just I'm gonna say what everyone's thinking and no one's willing to say out loud.
Yeah, your throat is like open.
Oh, the whole thing. Open throat, open ajna. There's like nothing going on up there and everything at the same time.
What is your experience of this is such a by the by geeky comment that's probably not helpful to anyone, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. I've been really noticing the difference between open and undefined centers recently. And my only fully open center is my G center. And the deepest wound I've ever had is I don't belong anywhere and I belong everywhere, right? And as we speak, I'm losing my home again. And this has been a repeating thing. It first happened to me when I was born, and then at 7, and then at 14, and then at 21, and then at 28. And I have this thing where I just lose my home over and over and over again. And part of that, I'm sure, is to do with my stability sphere in 47, and listeners will have heard me talk about that. But I also have been really in this experience, like dropping into my open G and being like, okay, I belong. I belong. I belong to myself wherever I am. I belong. And like really like feeling the hurt. And before I would never have been able to identify it. I would have just like numbed with work or like shown up in places where I'm like, if I'm really useful, then I'll belong. And then people will tell me I belong. And then I don't have to feel this feeling. But now I can feel the feeling and it's really uncomfortable. What does having an open throat or an open will center feel like?
Yeah. I think with the open throat, funnily enough, I think one of the best things that I've done for myself is in 2019, March 2019, I started my podcast. And I think that has probably changed my life in more ways than I can name. And I think it's going to come out now as I'm speaking. I think having an open throat actually is what happens is I just talk and then things come out and I'm like, I hope this is being recorded because don't ask me to say that again. Like that happens often. So many times with my fiance, we'll be talking about his business and I'll be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, what? Can you say that again? I was like, no, I don't know what just happened. So having a podcast has given me the space to speak. And it took some mindset work around, oh, nobody's responding to my emails and nobody's saying anything, but people are listening in silence. Like I had to get over that. And I got over it a very long time ago. But having a space where I could speak and just hear myself and just continue to refine my own voice has allowed me to just have my own voice. Like I think I have a very distinct way in terms of how I speak. And I think the other thing I notice is that when people speak to me, let's say if I'm in a coaching session or something, they could ramble for 5 minutes and then I'm going to repeat what they said in one sentence and they'll be like, that's it. I'm like, yes. Or I can almost hear what people aren't saying based on
That's
what
it.
it is they are saying. And I'm like, hey, you're saying this, but it's actually this. And they're like, what the fuck? So that happens as well. The other thing that has made a huge difference for me having an open throat is I use AI a lot. And I know there's like a whole world of conflict around using AI. And I've been very diligent the way that I use it, where I use it to externalize my thinking process, not for AI to give me ideas. It's like, here's what I'm thinking. Let's pressure test this. And so it's been really interesting using ChatGPT religiously since May of 2024. It's because it's mirrored my own voice,
Mm.
not the voice of others. I have become more succinct and articulate in terms of what I see, how I think, my methods, my processes. And that's been really validating. And it's like recently I've unfollowed everyone on Instagram. I deleted Instagram from my phone. I only have it on my iPad. Emailing, like I'm very much in my own world so that I don't start to sound like other people. So I'm like very diligent about those boundaries and also having like an undefined head, open ajna, like open throat. Like there's so much space to be filled. And so that's what I have to do to make sure that I'm full of myself and not everyone else, like you were saying earlier.
I can really see that. And, I love looking at people's whole charts when I'm talking to them because I'm like, things just pop. And it's like you're also moving towards 13 as your North Node and that loving listener and hearing the wisdom of everybody. And there's no way you would be able to hear all that wisdom if you were immature, open throat yapping. Right?
Yeah.
There's something
Yeah.
about learning when you have an open throat to shut your mouth until somebody says, hey, what do you want to say? Or you create a very succinct platform like you have. And the way that you've done your podcast is so in line with your design and has really been that beautiful 6-2-ness, right? Of like you've done it for you and the impact of that is massive. And if you were doing it for everybody else or you were trying to be a 5-line, it wouldn't work in the same way.
Yes. Yeah. I think the other thing too, you were asking about the open heart center.
Yeah.
And I think with that, that's been really interesting because I didn't realize this until, last couple of years. Both of my parents, my biological parents, have defined heart centers. So I
Mm.
find that very fascinating because I've always grown up with a shitload of discipline and also just being able to get things done. Like if I, like the other day, my coaches in my mastermind that I'm in, I was telling them something. I was like, here's how I feel like you can optimize the specific thing that we learned about on the call. And then my coach, obviously, she thanked me for that. And then she goes, Kehla, here's an idea for an offer I think you should do based on what you just said to me, because what you just did was brilliant. And I was like, wow, interesting. So she gave me something to sit with, right? Gave me something to respond to. So I'm sitting there and I'm mulling this over. And literally within an hour and a half, right? Just commit, did it. Was like landing page, pricing, email to go out tomorrow, the structure, the boundaries, boom. And so it's interesting because having that open heart center, I feel that my sacral, because I have the conscious and unconscious channel, it's like I'll sit, I'll mull it over, like, what am I saying yes to? This is crunchy, this isn't. But then that open heart center, like, I always have to come back and decide, like, what am I committing to? Like, where's my integrity? Like, that's like a huge thing around, like, okay, what's my integrity and capacity so that I'm not over delivering, so that I'm not throwing in all these bonuses and proving that, like, this thing is worth it, even if it's like a 4-figure investment, right? So it's very interesting to leverage. Like I notice I take those defined centers like G center sacral. I get deeply rooted in that until I'm fully lit up. Like there's like a very specific feeling of coherence that I get in my body. And I'm like, this is a full fuck yes. The whole thing makes sense. Now I can go and take action. And I find that that helps with the undefined centers. And that's really how I've been operating with an open heart center.
I love that. In Embody Your Design, which is my signature program, my ongoing group, where we do experiments and where I get people to try things out for themselves, and we compare notes of how it feels to be this or how it feels to be that, or talk about, oh, I'm in a relationship and I'm in a relationship with someone who has an emotional wave and it's this one, and those kinds of things, so that we each get an opportunity to really dive into that. And one of the ways that I teach it, or that we do it in a specific order for alchemy, and it starts with being a beacon of your defined centers and knowing that your signature, your full self, your signature self is your defined centers, because that's where you are your true self, right? But then we teach, and our medicine is from all of those undefined centers. It's from the wisdom that we've got from there. So I'm not a beacon of like having a direction and knowing that you belong, but I can teach from it forever, right? And so it's really cool to just to listen to your words for yourself of like, you know how that feels. It feels like coherence. It feels lit up. It feels, and you even made the kind of gestures around this like center part of your body, which is where that definition is. And I find it fascinating because I still see so many people seeking an answer from somebody else, right? Like, tell me what to do, tell me how to be, tell me which practices. It's like, actually, the whole point of this work is that each individual discovers what it feels like to be full of themselves and then recognizes when they're not.
Yeah.
Mhm. Have you got an area of your life that you're working on being fuller of you in at the moment?
Yeah. I think something that happened over Christmas was Guillaume and I, my fiance, we had a lot of spaciousness in terms of purposely taking time off and not, I'd go like days without opening my computer. And then we learned and we played cribbage and we bought a shitload of tea and it was just like watching Christmas movies. And I thought, okay, this can't just be, oh, a break and then back to the grind in the new year. How can I create more of this spaciousness in my life? So I came into January and that's when I decided to delete Instagram from my phone. I was like, I'm going to delete Instagram from my phone and I'm only going to use Instagram on my iPad and I can do stories and repost from my stories on there. And like I can do Instagram on my computer, on the desktop. And I just want to be more diligent with my time. And it's funny because we were talking about this before we hit record and I wanted to save the full thing for the recording, but being full of ourselves. So sometimes we think that we need to add more, but for me, I'm really focused on subtracting. Like this year, it's do less, say less. And because I have taken social media off my phone and I rarely check it, it decreased my screen time by 21% a day, which is huge. We're talking hours, right? That's doom scrolling. That's just doing dumb shit. Like it's just a waste of time. And so because I've had more spaciousness, I've had to sit more with my feelings
Mm.
and really be like, wow, like, okay, I'm doing these things intentionally in my business and it's taking longer than expected. And now I'm not filling my time with scrolling on social media or doing this, that, and the other. Like, I have this time. What am I going to do with my time? Okay, I start cooking more,
Mm.
right? Look, start doing these recipes. Guillaume and I are playing cribbage. I'm making tea. I've like just sat down on my couch and had a coffee without my fucking phone. And just doing that, like creating that more spaciousness. And I'm like, wow. And what's funny? What's really come up for me this month in particular is how much I feel like lonely and isolation because I think I was distracting myself because I had more time on my phone. And I was like, this is really interesting. And it made me realize, and I did this specifically. I like was one of my friends, I had shared something in my Instagram stories, just being transparent about my current reality of like all these amazing things are happening. And holy fuck, I feel isolated and it's taking a long time for things to catch up. One of my friends messaged me and she's like, hey, like, I'm really sorry that you're feeling like this. Like, I'm here for you. And what's great is that she's not an entrepreneurial friend, but she's someone that reached out to me. And I was like, that's where my energy is going, something to respond to. So I asked her, I said, let's hang out tomorrow. So we're going to hang out tomorrow. And so I've been taking things out of my life that have been distracting and dopamine hitting,
Mm.
sitting with the withdrawal symptoms, for lack of a better word, realizing where I was still over giving, over delivering, and pulling back has aligned me with my values so that I can put my energy in places like a really great friend reaching out to me and being like, yeah, let's hang out because you made an effort. I'm going to make an effort. Like, let's fucking go. So that's something that's come up for me just in the last like couple weeks being in this month of January and starting the new year.
Mm. It's so interesting. Whenever anyone says, have less screen time, what would happen if you like put your phone away or if you didn't look at it for days? I get this, oh, it's so interesting being a two line and being like, I would love that, right? Like, you understand that, right? The hermit in me is like, that's no problem. I can spend time alone. I love my own company. I love being in nature. Maybe I'll forget to ever come back. But for me, it is, yeah, my open centers. It's my root, my G, pretty much at the same time, that ping, where there's this like pressure. I should remember something. What should I remember? Then, it's like almost like root, head. No one loves me. Who loves me? Has anyone sent me any messages? And it's like this like little Christmas tree of pings. And I once, every now and then I don't turn it off, but I turn all the colors off my phone and make it black and white, and it becomes so uninteresting. It's like there's just nothing there I want to respond to. And then that waiting to respond piece becomes really interesting, right? Because then I'm bored of waiting. I hate waiting, right? Waiting's really boring. And then, like, sometimes something comes through to respond to. But it's like when people smoke for years, they can't taste anything subtle and they need big flavors. Or when women have used vibrators for years, they can't feel subtle sensations in their body anymore. And I think when we use our phones all the time and we're responding to these false dopamine hits, it's screwing our sacral because we're not able to fine tune to the aha, ah, ah. We need something to be big before we respond to it.
Yeah, what's really interesting about this is that often when people say, well, there's a couple times where I notice this happens is when women have an undefined, sorry, not undefined, unconsciously defined
Yeah.
sacral, they have a hard time connecting. I think it gets oversimplified online where it's like it's a fuck yes or it's a fuck no. And it's like, okay, start with you wake up in the morning and do you feel like having oatmeal or are you gonna make some scrambled eggs? Like so boring, so mundane. But when you can connect to those subtle signals, like you just said, that cultivates trust. And you have micro connections of trust with your day to day responses. So that when somebody rolls up one day and they're ready to pay $20,000 for your coaching package, as an example, and it's like a huge thing, and you're like, wow, this is a big yes or no for me. What is this? It's not because it's hype, momentum, dopamine, adrenaline. It's you're coming back to your truth and your guttural coherence to the signals. And I think the other thing that doesn't get discussed enough is when it comes to the sacral is something can be a yes, and then people think they said yes and then all of a sudden it didn't work out and they're like, I don't understand. But then I like to break it down. I'm like, okay, let's say in business, was it yes to the client? Was it yes to the pricing? Was it yes to the timeline? Was it yes to the scope of work? Oh wow, look, only 2 out of those 5 things were actually a yes. And then you said yes to the whole thing and then you were disappointed. Are you actually surprised? No, you're not. So that's the thing, is that sometimes I like to break things down into like micro little pieces and be like, what am I actually saying yes to? And then building something from there. Because initially, when I gave that example earlier about my coach giving me this idea, like, Kayla, you can go and do this offer. And I was like, initially, I said yes. And you know what was missing for me? I was like, this isn't fully clicking. And it was because there was a lack of specificity in what she had said to me. The second I dropped into, here's how I'm very specifically going to articulate this and how this is for this specific person, it was like, boom, full Christmas tree of lights, full yes, because I had literally looked at every single component. So that's something else too. The little yeses and nos, they matter so much more than people realize.
That specificity is so important. And I was going to finish that sentence with to you. And I think and like one of the things you're very overt about is specificity. And I'm like, specificity doesn't matter so much to me. Oh my God, it matters. But what I'm really learning is there's certain things I don't want to make decisions about surprise me. And that is my reflector mind. And so I've got much better at like, because it's so confusing for people in relationship with me. And like for years, I was just like, I'm really difficult to be in relationship with. And that's not an empowering thought. But to break it down as to like why, what is it specifically? And what it is specifically is that I have a lot of contradictions. There's a lot of things that are very contrary about me, which actually makes me very attractive, very sexy, very alluring, but also complicated. And so if I can't articulate it, then how can the other person ever really be at peace? and I attract a lot of six gates, like in our incarnation crosses. And I have the intimacy channel, and that peace piece is. I also, my body is a manifestor, so like the peace piece is really important to me. And so when I have that motivation, then I'm willing to like look at the specifics, right? Look at those things, and getting clearer and articulating for me. Actually, it's really helped with my siblings of being able to say things like, this is something I care a lot about, but the thing I care about is being with you. The like specifics of where we are, what we do. I don't have a lot of pull towards or like a need to define, but there are other things in my life where I'm like, no, it has to be this or this. And the more we can get clear on those little subtle signals from our body and then learn to express it, the better our relationships are going to be. And in Embody Your Design, we once a year I do a version that is aligned and expressed. And one of the things I talk about quite a lot is expression and the different types of expression. And actually, I'd love to hear your take on this as well. A lot of people think that expression is just like what comes out of our throat, our voice. But there's so much more to it. And we communicate or express for so many different reasons. And one of the things I see online all the time is people talking about like you've got to be okay with people not liking you. And that can be very difficult for people. One of my things and the way that my design works is that people often don't like me or they have a strong opinion about me. And that's because I'm very expressed, right? And that means you're going to have a response. And that's really helpful because it moves the energy. So I'd love to hear your take on that, on like the different types of expression, because I feel like you're going to have something, again, with that open throat, something really beautiful and different to say that people won't have heard before.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I do a lot of analysis inside of ChatGPT. Like when I start to notice patterns, but I don't fully have the words for it. And that's literally what I'm about to talk about. I learned about myself that I have this process. It's called like precognition, where I can see the shape of something or read the room or read someone's body language before the language even comes up. And what's interesting is I think it's just the way that I think, the way that I build. It's like, okay, here's the structure. Now bring in the language, which is crazy. Usually people are like, oh, here's the language, and then you build the thing. So I do it backwards. And like as an example, literally this morning, I was like, I was doing some work yesterday in ChatGPT. I was looking at a session I did with a client, and it had made a comment about, oh, this is part of your method. And I was like, part of my method? You're telling me I have a method that I don't even fucking see right now. And all of a sudden, I was like, what's my method? And it named it. And I was like, that's exactly what I do with clients. That's exactly it. So then my brain starts going, I'm like, oh shit, I think I'm going to write a book. So then I start going and I'm planning this out. And here's the thing. Sometimes people think, oh, here's the name of my book. Here's what's going to happen. And I was like, I don't want the name. I don't want the name of the book. I don't want the name of the method. I want the structure. What are the chapters? Who am I speaking to? What am I covering? Like I build the whole thing, and it's like the name, the language will come after. So months ago, when this whole precognition thing came up for me around like expression, how I express myself, how my thoughts express themselves, ideas, and so on, I was asking, like, why am I like this? And what's crazy is that I'm hearing impaired. So I've had hearing aids since I was 5 years old. And I grew up in an environment where my parents were separated. And my upbringing in particular with my dad was very volatile. Like I would say that he's a functioning alcoholic, narcissistic, like very intense, volatile home. I had to learn to read the room to survive. Checks out. So I could even, like, for example, this is so random. There's two things. I can watch, like, let's say a sports game or something, and you can like see the communication between what the coach is saying to the player, but they're covering their mouth. You can't read their lips. And I can like tell by the body language the type of conversation that they're having, but I don't know what they're saying. Like that's crazy. And there was recently too, I think in the last couple of years, like I'm not a huge fan of reels. I don't go on TikTok, but I can watch a reel of someone talking, and sure, there's captions. I can literally, this is like a lip reading thing, right? I can tell if someone has an accent before I know what their voice sounds like because I can read their lips. I'm like, oh, that's either like almost, I can almost tell like Australia and UK. Like I can see that they're not North American the way that they're speaking and the fucking volume isn't on. So expression, as much as people think it's about what it is that they're saying, again, this is coming back to what I said earlier. It's actually very much about what's not being said and what your body is showing and what's happening in the room, the energy that you can't actually see, but you can feel, and you don't have the words for it yet. So I've noticed very heavily in the last few months how much I operate in that realm. And it's like absolutely influenced from my childhood. It's absolutely affected by being hearing impaired. And also, you mentioned that I have the 13 in my North Node, which is the gate of the listener. I'm like, that's crazy. Like the gift of discernment and the gene keys, like 100% that plays into expression. So I love that you asked this question because I just thought, holy shit, you just opened a whole can of worms that I've never actually said out loud, but here's the story.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those personal details, because actually one of the things you're great at is sharing a whole load of engineering and very little personal details. And so it means a lot to me with my 59 to get those little pieces, because for me, that's how we connect with each other. You know, it is our stories and the subtleties, those tiny little pieces of the story that matter. I have no desire for anyone to be relatable. You owe nobody relatability, right? But your humanity, that you don't owe it to people, but it's what connects us. And that's the difference. And I'm so passionate about people's moment to moment experiences that make them who they are. Um, my niece has microtia. So she has one little ear and one regular ear, I suppose. And language is such a weird thing. Like her ears are regular, but one of them is not common and not usual. And you wouldn't know most of the time. And she's a manifester. And so when she was very little, she would get angry a lot. And she really struggled with it. And my brother very naturally would take her into another room, because in his world, he'd be like, she's probably really overwhelmed and she needs to come back into her body, but there are so many people here. And so let's take her away somewhere else. And so he would take her somewhere else and then like come down to her level and have a conversation with her and bring her back to, and really teach her how to come back to peace in her body. I have a manifested body. Nobody ever did that for me. It took me a really long time to be able to and he would say, one of the things he would say to her is like, if you need to get it out, like scream, shout, let it out, like jump up and down, do star jumps, whatever you need to do. There's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of anger and annoyance in your body. Make sure it comes out. And I love that with people are parenting like that, right? And because the expression of anger is still in there, regardless of whether or not it came out of your mouth. And it holds in the way that our tendons, are joined to one another, and whether they want to move or not, and whether your body is fighting you because you didn't listen to it, and all of those, all the autoimmune disease, all of that kind of stuff. And I think that the more conversations we can have about expression and all of the different ways that we might do it, the more responsible with emotion and energy in motion we can be, and the more that this mutation that we're going through collectively is going to end up somewhere positive.
Yeah, I think that expression, what I'm hearing based on what we both just shared, is like you're talking about the physical expression, like her moving her body, processing those emotions. There's the language expression of like the sounds that come out of our mouth, for lack of a better description, the words that we use. And then I'm talking about the unsaid expression where it is movement, but it's not, there's no sound, right? It's interpretation, and it's very subtle and it's very unconscious. Whereas I feel like, for example, with, your niece, for example, that moving energy is like expressed and it's loud, it's making noise, right? So it's interesting. There's so much here. It's more than just the words that come out of her mouth, and it's more than just the intention as well. It is the impact, but it's like way before that precognition piece I was talking about is like also the root of it.
It is. It's so important because if somebody like we think we need, and again, classic manifestors are told to use their voice and to sing or to move, right? But there are all these other ways to do it. And that might be being quiet. It might be reading a book. It might be turning your phone off, right? And these allow us to notice our expression. I feel like we could obviously talk about this all day, but I cannot keep you. Is there anything that we haven't said that you really wanted to share before we wrap up?
I feel that our conversation was great. Like I love the questions that you asked, and I got to really pull in some personal things that have been living in my head that
Yeah.
I just haven't been invited to express. And I was like, oh my gosh, this realization, this reflection on myself, like fits so perfectly into what we're saying. I think one thing that I want to share with the audience
Mm.
is the gift that I have because it ties in really beautifully to our conversation. And so what I have for the audience, it's called Your Business Reoriented, the Human Design and Gene Keys Lens. So this is a 5 podcast episode series for the women who really want support with decision making, pressure, and strategy in the sense of like from the lens of human design and gene keys. It's about orienting yourself. So if you notice, like a really common thread throughout everything in our conversation today was about where it is, like I was sharing where it is that I stand and
Mhm.
what I can see, the vantage point, very 6 line vibes. But this is something that I want to share with the audience to continue this conversation because I just think that what we started today was like really beautiful. And I just think the other thing I want to leave the listeners with is to just be kind to yourself. I think that's also a reminder for myself, like hindsight 2020. Like I just look at everything I've been building and the pressure and the tension that I've been navigating in the last 6, 7 months. And again, it will always be hindsight 2020. And if it's not clear yet, then it's not over. And your job is to just keep going in the kindest way possible.
Mm. I think it's so important that we stop and drop and do that for ourselves, and you have it literally written there in your incarnation cross, but it can be really difficult to see it for ourselves, right? Can I be kind or as compassionate to myself as I would be to everybody else? You have that with the 6 and the 36, and I have it with my 27, right? Like I'm so nurturing of everyone else. When do I stop and remember that I need that same consideration and that nurturance back? So thank you. I'll make sure in the show notes all of your links are there so people can connect, that the link to the freebie is there so people can go and get it and do, because it's anything that Kehla makes is incredibly considered and well thought out and engineered, and you will enjoy it as well. And also beautiful, which is a high need requirement in my world. Often people put these things together and I'm like, yeah, but it's ugly, I can't engage. And your stuff is also beautiful as
Thank
well.
you.
If people want to come and hang out with you, Instagram's still the best place to kind
Yes.
of come say hi.
Yes, at Kehla G on Instagram. Come on my email list. I don't repeat necessarily what I do on Instagram on my email list. It's like 2 different worlds. I have a podcast episode that drops every week, mix of interviews and like really beautiful conversations like what we had today. Me just sharing my own journey. And those are the main places right now to connect and get to know me. And then of course, if you want to come into paid spaces, then we can definitely have that conversation as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you to the listeners for being here and witnessing this conversation.
Thank you for tuning in to Becoming Full of Yourself. If you found resonance here, subscribe, share it with someone who's ready to reclaim their fullness, and leave a review to help others find this work. For more resources, rituals, real talk on living a fully fulfilled life, head to ebonyallard.com. Until next time, be bold, be brave, be full of yourself.